Hello, Oracles. Well, as many of you probably saw, Elon did a version 12 FSD drive live on Friday afternoon. So I'm not going to get into the drive itself. It was 45 minutes long. If you guys are over on X, definitely check it out there. I know some people are working on cutting it down, like the boring parts, and speeding it up so you can see it. But the difference between what we know now from what is out publicly and what Elon drove with is night and day. It is a massive game changing jump that we have seen FSD go. Now, of course, there are many of us out here who knew that this was coming. We knew this progression was on its way. Elon said that by the end of this year, they would have it solved. Here we are in August, and we're already seeing this. So, massive changes, huge things coming. So, what we're going to discuss today is when we think this is actually going to make a huge difference when it comes to Tesla's financials, when it's going to make a mass difference when it comes to the actual public usage and getting regulated, and what implications it could have for the stock price moving forward. So, we'll get into all of that in just a minute. All right, so a few key takeaways from Elon's FSD drive. So the biggest piece of this is AI driven. So when he's talking about a lot of times on this drive, it's, hey, this stop sign here, there's no line of code that says this stop sign, you need to stop. There's a bicyclist that they pass. He says there's no code that's written that says you need to, slow down and be cautious of that bicyclist. So what it comes down to is it's all video driven, very much like a human. With a human, we go through life, we experience things, we learn from those experiences. So the way they are training this AI is that they're just showing it a ton of videos. This is why having as many vehicles on the road as possible is key, because they could take in all of that information and then show it to AI and have AI learn from all of that information. Now, as Nick Gibbs had pointed out previously, having the information coming in doesn't mean anything unless you have a way to process it. Here comes Dojo. This is why Dojo coming in and getting online to be able to help process and facilitate all of that information is going to speed this up. This is why it was so imperative that Tesla, got as many vehicles on the road as possible out this year. They didn't care if they had to drop the prices down because getting the vehicles on the road is the most important thing. They're going to take all of that information from those vehicles and put it into their AI engine to be able to get this vehicle and FSD up and running as soon as possible. This is the whole entire strategy. Now, this year alone, Tesla did say that they're going to be investing $2 billion into compute for this. So this is huge. And so, yes, you look at a $2 billion investment into compute, but as Peggy breaks down here in his post, if Tesla solves FSD by 2025, and they have approval to send all their vehicles one over-the-air update in 2026, that's over 12 million Tesla vehicles all over the world. Let's say only 50% opt in at $200 per month. That's 6 million vehicles times $200, approximately $1.2 billion per month. So you multiply that out by the year, that's $14.4 billion annually. So that's revenue of $14.4 billion. Let's say it's a 60% margin on it. That's $8.6 billion in profit Tesla would see in 2026 if this scenario played out. So now, of course, there's a lot of what ifs in there. Is it going to be regulated worldwide? Is it still just going to be in North America? Judging by conversations we have seen Elon have with Japan, with India, with China, I have a feeling it's going to be more global than just North America. But even if it is just North America, the profits they would be getting alone from just North America in 1 year would more than pay for the $2 billion in compute that they invested this year. This is going to be a massive return on investment for Tesla. So here's another piece. We are hearing all these rumors about Project Highland and the Model 3 and the huge lowering of cost of production on this vehicle. We have no details. We have no confirmation on any of this. But if you start lowering the price of vehicles, now people will have more money to be able to spend on FSD. So we're going to see a higher take rate. We still have a lot of macro environment stuff to go through before we get to a point where interest rates come down so people aren't paying even more for the vehicle. But that should start coming down in 2024. As that starts coming down, vehicles become more affordable. As the vehicles become more affordable to people because they're not paying such high interest, they might opt in for that FSD package. So we can be seeing this really taking off, especially if we're going to be seeing version 12 rolling out by next year. Now, there was a question asked about hardware for vehicles because those are starting to roll out. And Elon did state hardware 4 software will lag hardware 3 by at least another 6 months, as our focus needs to be on getting FSD on hardware 3 working super well and provided internationally. So now, of course, that piece of internationally is huge because as of right now, we don't have that out there internationally. It's North America. So, where internationally are we going to be going with this? Obviously, eventually they want to have this go globally, but we know it's going to take some time. So, moving this forward, we could be seeing maybe again Japan, China, these countries coming on board, maybe some places in Europe being able to take this and take FSD. And what's going to end up happening there is, again, when it comes to their AI engine and how they train it, it's all about video. Now they have all these vehicles in all of these other countries. That's the data that they need. So right now, the AI only knows what data it's taught. So sure, even if you took what Elon had driving around on Friday and put it somewhere in Europe that it's never been before, it's going to struggle because it hasn't learned how to do that. Again, just like a human. You have a human going to a place that they've never been before. There may be some similarities that are going on there and it might be able to squeak by, but there's going to be a learning curve. This is why they need to have it up and running in other countries to be able to get that video data coming in to process all of this. This is the game changer. This is what we've been waiting for, and version 12 is it. So, this is why Elon a while back had stated, he's like, it's coming. He's like, I can feel it. So when he saw that was the turn, and now they got to the point where they don't have to write lines of code for every single thing anymore. They literally just have to show AI videos and it will self-learn. This is AI. This is true AI where you show it experiences, you show it videos, and it will learn on its own. You don't have to tell it every single thing. This is like, when you have a child and you're walking around, the child says, Dad, what do I do with this? And you have to say, this is what you do with this. Well, as you become an adult, you start to learn how to figure out and answer those questions on your own. This is AI. This is what we now see with version 12 FSD. That is the massive game changer. And then, of course, as we saw with Peggy breaking down the financials on it, that is where we're going to see the big change. Now, of course, the question is going to come down to when is it going to be regulated? Who knows? I've said it before. We might actually see it get regulated over in China before it gets regulated here in the US. And that's strictly just because in the US, it takes us forever to get anything done. So again, we have elections going on in 2024. By the time the new administration comes in, if it does end up changing, maybe 2025, they start talking about these regulations. It's kicked around the road for a while. Who knows? Now, we do know that here in the US, it does go state by state. So some states do have it regulated, totally fine, while others do not. So having it done on a national basis is going to be the huge piece that we are waiting for. But again, a place like China, where they don't have the same political parties and setup that we do, they might just say, hey, cool, we're good with it, let's go. And they just make it happen and it's done immediately. So that could very well happen before we see it in the US. Of course, there's a lot of vehicles and Teslas over in China as well. So that right there and that take rate is going to be massive also. We can see this coming with a huge boost to the stock price as well, because as soon as Wall Street can start putting dollars to FSD truly and can actually factor this into their valuation models, that's when we are really going to end up seeing the stock price take off. So again, my prediction is between 2025 and 2026 before this happens. So that would give us a couple of years of buying time before we really see that turn. And now, on our way to get to 2025 and 2026, there could be some massive macro uncertainty in the next year. So Open Skies had posted out about the M1 and M2 money supply, and I'll share that in a second. But I posted off of this when the housing market crashed in 2008. $5 trillion was wiped out. If we want to talk about bubbles, let's talk about the money supply bubble. The Fed has a significant amount of their balance sheet yet to run off, and we have all this excess money still sloshing around in the market. Do you think it's sustainable? And so looking at the post, M1 and M2 money supply, $4 trillion to $19 trillion in less than 3 years printed by the Fed. The M1 money supply line is literally straight up. I mean, that's a scary looking line where we just printed all of this money. Like seeing it going up from 2010 to 2020, that was a significant steeper incline than we have seen in the past. But going straight up in 2020 and it's only dipped down a little bit, that's concerning to me. And then looking at the M2 money supply, it's been climbing steadily over time. But when you look at that year to year change, it goes up again very drastically. And we only see a tiny little hook of it coming back down. That's a lot of money. If we want to get back down to where we were previously, that's a massive amount of money that we need to pull out. And so if we're looking at the M2 money supply at about $22 trillion right now, and it's just been going up exponentially, and we saw in 2018 it started to go vertical at that point for the M2 money supply. So if we go back and say, hey, let's get us leveled off to where we should be at that point, we're looking at probably about $5 to $6 trillion that need to get flushed out of the market just to get back to that point. So now, of course, none of this is guaranteed. We don't have to have that happen. But, when the Fed is printing this kind of money and they say, hey, we're saying that inflation is transitory, Jess had pointed out over on X, how could they have possibly said it was transitory when look at the money supply? Look at it. It's just screams straight up. If you're going to 5x the money supply, then you have to expect a 5x of inflation. How could you be shocked? And so now we need to take that down. So inflation is coming down, but they still have a lot of that balance sheet to run off. So if we're going to be looking at a bubble, we could be looking at a money supply bubble. That might be what ends up triggering this big sell-off going into next year. So again, I did pose a question over on X. We saw the COVID crash. We saw a massive pullback last year. NASDAQ pulled back 35%. Were those two the crashes that we could possibly see? We know historically it happens around every 8 to 10 years. We saw those two, but they both V-bounced out of it. Every time it has happened in the past before this, it's been a slow, gradual climb to come out. So is this something that we could be seeing again, where we see another massive pullback and then we gradually climb out of this? Or have we already seen it and now we're on our way out already and we're just going to keep going up from here? I can't fathom us continually going up from here. We're already way past where we should be when it comes to the money supply. The Fed still needs to run things off. The Fed may still be raising rates again in November. They've talked about it at Jackson Hole Symposium. So much stuff that is still uncertain in the market. And when you look at historically, when we had the last two crashes, the housing market crash and the dot-com bubble crash, we both saw those times happen. And September and October were the worst for the market when it comes to declines, and both of those were in election years. So taking that into account, next year is an election year. Next year, we could possibly be seeing this ugliness going on. Every single time we have an election year that's going on, we always see the market pull back from the uncertainty of, which party is going to be coming in, how are we going to invest after that. That always happens, and that could be a massive trigger. So while I thought we might actually get to a point where we were going to be seeing it, crash before then and then coming out of it because they didn't want to have to deal with it during the election, I was wrong. When you look historically, it has been during that election time. Those 2 months leading up to the election have been the worst for the market. Now, again, I don't mean to be this dark cloud. I'm a very positive, bullish guy, but I always want to make sure I'm aware of all the risks and potentials that are out there when it comes to the downside of my portfolio. And this is one of them. And there's a lot of signs that have been pointing to this potential thing happening. And the Fed coming out recently and just talking about how where they might have to force the jobs market to soften a bit as well. So that getting us to a potential recession if we have too many job losses. Lots of uncertainty still going on. This is why I have shifted a lot of my focus onto dividend portfolios, because having that cash flow coming in will allow me to take advantage of this. Plus, if we get to some really ugly economic time stuff, people losing jobs, I already know my job is uncertain right now where I'm even going. I know I have to move, but I have no idea where I'm going, what I'm going to be doing, what I'm going to be getting paid. So that could be transpiring for a lot of people. I don't want to have to deal with that. I want to make sure I have my own control of my own money coming in, and I'm working on that now. Plus, as we get to it and we have that time happen, if it happens, I'll have more money to invest because as Warren Buffett says, fortunes are born during bear markets. We saw one happening recently. We might get a deeper one next year. Those are the times where you can really buy your favorite stocks on sale and really grow your wealth in the long term. And Tesla for me is going to be one of those. Again, with FSD and everything we just learned today and what Elon showed us on Friday, that tells me that when we see a situation that may potentially happen in the market next year, the companies that are showing things like Tesla is showing, that's where I want to put my money. So that's my strategy, not financial advice, but I am definitely highly paying attention to what is happening with Tesla. Very much so going to be buying as much as I possibly can. And again, my dividends bringing in this cash flow will allow me to buy even more. So again, for all of my members and patrons, I do post out my dividend portfolio, my regular portfolio, income, expenses, and investments, everything I have posted for you guys on a weekly basis. And every day I will post as well all of my scheduled buys for the next day. Over on X, I do put those out day of, but my members and patrons will get the sneak preview of that ahead of time. So lots of stuff. I want to share everything I possibly can with you guys about what I am doing to help give you some information and maybe some ideas to help you learn more about what you can do for your portfolios. So very excited about these dividends, very excited about Tesla, very excited about FSD. You guys can let me know in the comments below what you think about it. Let me know if you had a chance to watch that video yourself. If you haven't, I definitely highly recommend it. Very good, obviously on Elon's page over on X. So otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate all of your support. Have a great one.